Truth, lies, shenanigans.
All right, Gianni Storm. Gianni Storm, is this a truth, lie, or is this shenanigan?
This is a truth, a hard fact. So, two U.S. Capitol Police officers have been arrested. I'm sorry, were suspended, and at least two more are under investigation for their actions during last week's attack on the Capitol. So, federal agents will look at whether the current and former law enforcement officers played a role in the riot, as we talked about in like the previous hot topic about how the officers were acting. So I know Liz mentioned that one of the officers had actually opened like a barricade to the lawn, and there were others taking selfies. There were others that were kind of like talking to the rioters, nice, yeah, being nice
That's
to them.
right there.
Yeah, in
That's
that
the selfie
picture,
right
selfie
there.
guy.
Crazy. So we saw them talk about a viral video on how there were off. Oh yeah, the barricade video. So I looked onto another article where it was talking about the guy that actually shot the video for that we saw that went viral. He says that the police officers actually didn't just open the barricade. He said that the police officers were outnumbered and that one of the Trump rioters had put up a fist ahead of time, and there was just like I don't know, they were just they felt threatened, and so that's why they kind of like opened it. So that's up to debate. I don't know, but basically the Capitol Police officers that have been in question in the media about their role in the riot, do you believe they would have investigated these officers if it weren't for public outcry or like the us seeing it, us seeing the videos, or public shaming of the Capitol officers' actions on that day?
Let's start with Lizzie. I think she's ready to talk.
I think because one of their fellow officers died, I do think that there would have been some type of investigation. If not for that, they may have tried to gloss over it, or there may have been a cover up in some way. But that's another thing people need to realize. This is 2021. Everything, there's a camera everywhere. We don't call it CCTV here, really, in the United States.
CCTV.
That's more of a European term, or do they call it CCTV in Canada?
I've heard it referred to CCTV.
Well, I'm familiar with the term, but it's a dying term because everybody got one of these.
Yeah, it's not a term that everyone uses here, that everyone knows here. Like if you go to London, you say CCTV, everyone knows what you're talking about. Here, like Rob said, it's a camera phone.
Right.
So I think people need to realize that Big Brother is always watching, whether you know it or not. Whether you look up in the sky and there's a camera there, or whether I'm standing behind you like, I got you, bruh, I got you. But I think there would have been a little bit of both. I think like I said, because the officer was killed, I do think that there would have been some type of impetus to do an investigation to figure out what happened to him, because he was beaten to death with a fire extinguisher. But then on the flip side, I do think that there would have been some efforts to cover up some stuff, if you will. So I say a little bit of both, which again is sad. It is sad that it's really come to this. But I don't know. Like the more I'm seeing online about the threats, because the threats have not stopped about the potential for violence for next Wednesday. Thankfully, Wednesday is a day off for most people, so people do have the opportunity to stay home. Everyone stay home. Do not go and be a part of that foolishness. But I'm still a little bit nervous. Because never did I think that what happened last Wednesday would have happened. Like I thought that there were going to be clashes outside. Like, did I think that there were going to be some fisticuffs outside? Absolutely. I did not think that there was going to be the storming of the Capitol building. Like that just blew my mind. And if anyone, for those of you who are watching who are Facebook friends with me, if you look at my timeline from last Wednesday, I am typing, there is not a police officer in sight.
Yep.
What is happening? What is happening? And so I think, Gianni, to answer your question, again, it's a little bit of both. I think fortunately for us, we have the technology now to document things as they happen in real time as evidence. So we can put people on blast. So we can expose these criminals. So if you are my family member and I see you on TV, I can call the police and turn you in. It's a good thing, but it's something to think about, because 10 years ago, I don't think that, we would have all of this public outcry because there would be no evidence.
All
There
right, let's
would
get
be
Robbie
no
Rock in here. Robbie?
That's
Yeah, because there were casualties on both sides of the conflict. Yeah, I do believe that there would have been an investigation. Um, and like Liz was saying, just 10 years ago, I don't know that we would have had we definitely wouldn't have had all of the video to go back to. So we would have been relying on the surveillance systems from the Capitol, and they wouldn't be releasing this footage. They weren't be required to release any of this footage. So under an internal review, they may look at an officer who's taking the selfies, or he's not taking the selfies, he's posing for somebody else's selfie. And that is, I mean, that's gross misconduct. Really, that's completely inappropriate of that officer. If we wouldn't have had that footage, if it would have been on a closed circuit system that's internal to Capitol Hill, then
I'm sure
an
it's
internal
gotta be.
reviewer may say, hey, you know what, this is under the rug. These are good cops, sweep this under the rug. But also, you have to stop at what I had to really stop and think about when Liz was saying, like, these people come from all walks of life. The mob that descended upon DC came from all walks of life. You had former military, you had fire services, law enforcement. So who's to say how many law enforcement members within DC would be complicit with these actions to just kind of go, hey, you know what? Hey, yeah, give me the MAGA hat. Oh, yeah, someone knocked off my hat and gave me the MAGA. Okay. But if I could see someone having a conflict of conscience and saying, you know what, the mob's here, I'm on board. Let's go, guys. Let's
I
go.
will defend the MPD, the Metropolitan Police Department, because I don't believe any of those people would have been involved in some type of conspiracy like that. And I think if it were the Capitol Police, it would have been, it definitely would have been the higher ups. Um, I really, would be surprised if, I don't know, I just don't feel like some of those individuals in the Capitol Police Department were trying to be, I don't know. I think they were overwhelmed and didn't know what to do. That's what I truly believe. That they were overwhelmed. I mean, I want to play this video real quick. I mean, this is just a clip of we were showing earlier, but of this one guy who's been deemed a hero. He was leading people away from the chambers. So people, some of them were letting people through to keep them from, doing worse damage or causing more issues, or I don't know. Sometimes you have to let people in to avoid. Let's take this guy for example. So what he did is he led them down an open area where more police officers were, as opposed to, if you look at this room here, there was a room to the left, a hallway to the left, where there were actual representatives and people of Congress who were actually held up there. So he was leading them away from those rooms. And sometimes you got to do some of those things. You got to let them in to keep them from going to the places they shouldn't be.
That's completely different than opening the door. Like, they were already inside. And if you pay attention,
I agree with opening the door.
If you pay attention, especially to what was going on with the conflict and the confrontations outside, and this is another example of how the Capitol Police were exposed, a lot of them were not armed. Some of them were plain clothes. That's why you see them spraying people with mace. That's why you see them engaging people with their fists, with their hands, because they didn't even have guns on them.
Yeah.
And so that goes back, like you said, to the planning, to the conspiracy part of it. Like, they didn't even have riot gear on. That was not the case back over the
No
summer.
backup, no nothing. There was no strategy whatsoever.
And so, so that's why, there's this idea that they
I really
were
think some of them were the individuals were overwhelmed though.
overwhelmed because they
Yeah.
did not have the capacity to protect themselves.
I think they were overwhelmed and they made bad decisions.
But if you look at when Ashley Babbitt was shot, as the officer won, he only fired one shot. She fell, and everyone dispersed. So imagine then
If they had actually shot people. Yeah.
exactly if they're at the door, multiple officers at the door, they fire warning shots, or they start shooting people as they come through the door, which would be within their right to do so. It would have been a complete, in my opinion, it would have been a completely different story.
I think so
Because
too, actually.
when she went
When you start seeing people die, you don't want to be the one dying.
and one
Right.
of them, and those guys that were at the place where Ashley was, they weren't armed. The majority of them were not armed. So when she went down, the look on old boy's face, he was like, "Oh shit!" And people started to run because they knew, okay, we weren't expecting to get shot.
Yep.
So it was a lot, like you said, a lot of failures on all fronts.
All right, Gianna, I'll give you 30 seconds to, if you have some comments real quick, and then I'll get to the online.
Yeah, so just tying this back to the whole conspiracy thing, it is weird that, of course, they're overwhelmed. There's like one person to like maybe 50, 60, whoever, know, however much. So, of course, they're overwhelmed, but I don't know. Even the cop, he looked out of shape. Like, what is going on? Like, who hired them? Like, I'm so confused. It seems like
Most
at the
of
last
those
minute
cops
they
are out of
picked
shape.
the right cop. I don't know. Why did you have a little like he only had like I think baton and some pepper spray.
That's what I'm saying. Like they were not.
Throw the baton.
They were not.
I've never seen this with all the things that the way that DC handles these events. I've never seen it like this. Never seen it handled like this, which tells me that why was this different? You know, you have to ask why was this different? Because I'm telling you, like I say, living in and around DC for so many years, we have seen all kind of controlled events, and this was by far the worst I've ever seen. And the question is, why is this different? Why? I don't know.
Like I felt bad
Then
for
one
those
room was
cops
shot.
that had to engage in, hand combat. Like there was the one video of the cop who he was on the ground being beaten and kicked. No support, nothing.
If you look at the picture behind me, that was a police officer being beaten in the crowd. I mean, and look at his face. I mean,
Terrified.
It's awful.
and that's the MPD, it's Metropolitan Police Department. All right, let's get to these comments online and move on to the next. Let's see. We got Ernest Cooper says he disagrees with me. He also says the cops were set up for failure. That doesn't mean you take selfies and open the gates to protesters.
Yeah.
Rupka says one good shot. Talking about the shot for
They only shot one time.
perfect shot,
They only
right?
shot one time.
She was shot in the head, right? So,
No, she was shot in the chest. She was shot in the chest.
she was shot in the chest.
Shot in the
Okay.
chest.
Rupka says, yep, getting out of this wicked country as soon as possible. Jacqueline Robinson said, the black officers were livid. They felt that their Capitol officers and management left them out to fight without backup. And that's exactly what they did. Left them, and then Kevin Thaxton asked, so we cussing in 2021?
I answered, I was cussing in 2020. Why would I change in 2020?
All right, let's get on to the next hot topic. We're running low on time. All right.
Truth, lies.